Good evening. I'm your host, Karen Hudis, in this series on the network of global corporate control. Today's show is pre-recorded and is called Reality is Reality and the Lying Banking Cartel is Getting Wound Down Because It is Bankrupt. At some point, people will catch on to the truth. This title is for the people who have been following us during the nearly 3 years that DCTV has been broadcasting this series on the corruption in the world's money. Thanks to DCTV, Carmen Stanley, studio producer and director, and Lolita Rochford, audio and teleprompter, and also I think Mo is on the teleprompter as well tonight, yes? Now let me give you some background for the newbies. This is a perfect time for us to get to know one another. There are now enough people who realize that they have been lied to for their whole lives about very important things, like where their money is going, who is their enemy, what happened in history, who is paying the salaries of judges, and whether courts are fair, who the people that are supposed to represent them in the government are actually working for, and whether the events that are reported in the news are actually happening, or whether we know what's going on at all. It's taken us a while to get through to enough people who realize that these basic questions have very disturbing answers. The disturbing answer is that the people who print the world's money have been using that money to lie to everyone, and for a very, very long time. There are a few families called the black nobility who have established a very corrupt world money system so that they could take advantage of everyone else. At the end of World War II, a very powerful man from the Philippines, Jose Rizal, was able to melt and stamp all the world's gold and put most of the world's precious metals, gemstones, and art treasures in a trust to gather the bonds that purchased the world's gold and to have these bonds earn compound interest in the trust, and then to have his lawyer, Ferdinand Marcos, create a big co-op so that the world's people could bankrupt the bankers. That is where we are today. The bonds in the trust, called Treaty of Versailles bonds, are now worth $2 quadrillion. We're using these bonds to bankrupt the banking cartel. We're very much on track to stop the New World Order. I wanted to show you the heart of my 99-page tweet from earlier this morning. Lots of people are reading the tweet, even though it's a little hard to digest. The fact is, the banking cartel doesn't have a leg to stand on anywhere. So here's my comment. Your article hasn't named the empire as Vitali Glatfelder and Battiston of ETH Zurich, the network of global corporate control. You are incorrect also that the immediate future remains unclear, particularly for Western nations. We have been guided by an accurate power transition model that comes from the U.S. National War College. You are correct that we are now witnessing the final days of an empire which will be written about with historical clarity. Your last point, how exactly did they get away with what they did for so long, and why didn't we see it? We did see it, and by raising red herrings in the alternative media, the answer to your question can be understood readily through this comment. So what I've been doing is to go to the Russian and Chinese embassies in Washington and then to contact the BRICS meeting in Goa, India last week. The comment was written a number of years ago. The Sirius report was never posted. I reprinted it in 2016 in a DCTV teleprompter, and you can see on page 7 what I said. The whole point about the power transition model and game theory is that the people who can influence a problem change positions in reaction to each other. The factor which is now bringing down the network of global corporate control is the awareness of the public in each of the BRICS countries, as well as the allies of the United States that are subject to state capture by the network of global corporate control, that is Japan, Germany, and the United States. Does Japan want to be defended by the United States military? The Joint Japan-U.S. Committee under the Status of Forces Agreement is keeping the U.S. military honest, and there's no getting around the fact. That's why the Postmaster General of the U.S., Megan Brennan, is still refusing to this day to deliver the priority letter which I mailed to the Japanese embassy in Washington. And then I'm going to read you a question that I just recently got from Laura. It was on the 18th that she sent the question to my email. Good morning, Ms. Hudis. I've been following your segment on DCTV and your social media platforms, and I understand that we're in the middle of the global currency reset. Although I do understand the positive side of the change, I have a few questions. In one post, you answered a question and mentioned that we're indefinitely being able to foresee the positive future of the Western nations based on the power transition model. Why is it only the Western nations? Does the African Union play any part in the change, or does the African Union have nothing to do with what's going on? Why aren't they ever mentioned, as they also have central banks and through the African continent? And I responded, of course, the African nations figure in. My response was only because of the way the article was written. And she had another question about local currencies. I found a gold currency through Carrot Bars International, which has their headquarters in Stuttgart, Germany. Is that one of the local currencies ready available that you're speaking of, or is this private organization also owned by the Banking Cartel? And my response, the gold currency from Carrot Bars is not local currency. It's just gold, and people can buy gold and use it as currency. Local currency is for the merchants in a village to agree to a barter system. There are loads of communities that have got their own local currencies. At the end of an email, I'll send you some articles on local currencies, and you can read those in the teleprompter. And Laura then wrote, furthermore, I would like to understand what's going to happen to all banks and credit unions. Are they going to be shut down, or will some banks still operate? What's going to happen to our existing bank accounts? And will the currency sector generally be overseen by the AIB, which I understand was formed out of the IMF and World Bank? And my response, there's going to be a transition. The existing management of the banks and credit unions is going to be phased out. All of this will happen gradually, and the speed at which it happens depends on how soon the local communities organize themselves so that they can help take decisions. And Laura then asked, I read that there are 210 countries that signed the agreement for the global currency reset. Where can I find a list of these countries? And then my response, that is Banking Cartel hogwash. Get yourself into a small group and follow what I have to say. And Laura then thanked me. I appreciate your time and look forward to your response. Reality is reality, and the lying banking cartel is getting wound down because it's bankrupt. At some point, people will catch on to the truth. I wrote that last Sunday, and I posted a tweet 3 years ago. Since then, I've been working together with a big team called the Coalition for the Rule of Law to defeat the banking cartel. When a critical mass joined the coalition, I started telling everyone that we were in a new reality. The banking cartel did everything it could to interfere with my message, but reality is reality, and the banking cartel became even more vulnerable to being shown up for the bankrupt liars that they are. That is what I mean when I say that everything that the banking cartel is trying backfires. And here's where the banking cartel threw the book at me and the rest of humanity, including the world's militaries in the Coalition for the Rule of Law. And then I wrote to Interpol, the CIA, and the rest of the banking cartel. You are trying to confuse people by calling your lies facts. When you're over the target, you get flack. I've already exposed the bar. On November 7th, I said that lawyers were in total denial that people are on to their corruption. In yesterday's segment for the DCTV series on the network of global corporate control, I said the lawyers were doing themselves out of a profession. I've been posting the teleprompters ever since the network of global corporate control started jamming DCTV's live streaming. Yesterday the link was broken. So an anonymous person who posted on my Facebook is not going to score by accusing me of being a member of the bar. This anonymous poster knows zilch about economics or the fact that the United States needs to replace paper currency before we all go back to the Dark Ages through something called permanent gold backwardation. That's described by the world's foremost monetary economist, Antal Fekete. And there's a picture which I'm giving you that starts to show you what the problem is. If anybody has an idea how to transition before we all descend into permanent gold backwardation, pestilence, starvation, and World War III without granting amnesty to the traitors, I'd like to hear from them. Remember, the traitors at the top are still able to give orders, even though many brave people are now refusing to carry out the treasonous orders, such as Vice Admiral Tim Giardina and Major General Michael Carey when they refused to nuke Charleston, South Carolina on the 7th of October in 2013. Even though the Coalition for the Rule of Law is now in charge, and even though the global debt facility has liens on the Federal Reserve banks and on the assets of these traitors, only with amnesty can we transition in time to prevent permanent gold backwardation. And an anonymous person sent in a comment. She found a way to give a fake name that didn't link to a person on Facebook. And she started off by giving accurate information to win people over. She wrote, in Congress on the 30th of June, 1864, described in detail in both the Houston and Lufkin record, on that date, Congress quietly decreed that the word state, and shortly after that, state and United States, means the territories and the District of Columbia. And then I'm giving you in the teleprompter some of the quotes for where you can find those laws. It was on the 30th of June in 1864. And ultimately, it translates to the District of Columbia only and excludes all of the commonwealths that are united by and under the authority of the Constitution and admitted to the Union. Since June 30, 1864, any joint tenant in the sovereignty, that means you, who innocently believes or admits that he resides in the state or in the United States, he's actually confessing or conceding that he's a resident of the District of Columbia and subject to the absolute exclusive legislative power of Congress and jurisdiction of District of Columbia, executive and bench officers, the Department of Justice, attorneys, and U.S. district judges and magistrates. magistrates. The upshot of all of this is that no U.S. district court has jurisdiction outside the actual District of Columbia, and never did. And by corollary, if the federal courts at the district level are limited in this way, so are the federal state courts and federal county courts. It's just a matter of time before the entire federal court system is recognized as a crime syndicate and liquidated. All the millions of people who are jailed over income taxes, all the millions foreclosed on, all those who have been kidnapped and kept under false arrest for victimless crimes, all those who have lost custody of their children, all the billions on billions of dollars charged each year against our public purse to keep innocent Americans incarcerated. And it's all based on the semantic deceit and a fraud that began in 1864. The judges and attorneys who have used this system to protect the perpetrators are now under pressure themselves. All their secrets are long dug out of that giant manure pile mentioned earlier, and not only do they and their buddies, the bankers, not have immunity, their friends in Congress are going to be held accountable too. What does all this have to do with my beef with Karen Hudes? It's simply this. These banks and the bar associations, all of them worldwide, are at the bottom of the dog pile, the root cause of all the destruction, theft, criminality, and misery we and many other nations have suffered for over 100 years. The Congress has functioned as their handmaiden, and the Vatican has been their concubine. Now the jig is up, and the facts are rolling in like ocean breakers. Those who have had no mercy on any of us are now demanding mercy, exoneration, and a get-out-of-jail-free card. And I'm saying this, that what I was telling you before, that's a comment. And my response is that there's a lie. The facts are not rolling in like ocean breakers. The fact that there's a ready solution by the United States and other countries using their monetary gold reserves in the global debt facility, this is known only through diligent work and cooperation by a team of people. This team all believe that our need for survival is more important than our need for revenge. The network of global corporate control, not the team that's been helping me, have a million excuses for their behavior. They didn't know, the dog ate it, it was necessary for the war effort. They stand around like cows, waggling their ears at all of us. Gee, boss, I didn't know anything about the manure pile out back. Generations of congressional delegations have sold Americans into slavery, literally, then come home and smiled and led the 4th of July parade. Generations of bankers have advertised personal bank accounts under false pretenses, advertised home loans that don't exist, land sales that don't exist, securities that don't exist. Generations of lawyers have defended and perpetrated and profited from all this abuse, bungo, and all the while claimed to be among the educated and elite members of our societies, responsible for maintaining the rule of law. How can anyone in their right mind look at what's gone on here and still babble about the rule of law? Karen Hudes is now advocating the rule of law and claiming that failure to maintain the rule of law will land us back in the Dark Ages. Where in heaven's name does she think we've been? Americans have clearly and forever stated that we don't live under the rule of law. We live under the rule of the people, of the people, by the people, and for the people. Someone seriously needs to inform Miss Hudis of this fact. And I responded that Twitter had removed a picture of cherry blossoms from my tweet about Japan. When I booted up my computer, the tweet popped up, so I'll remind you of the attempted nuke of Charleston again. And that was published in August in 2017. Patience Wright tweeted the link to a forgotten November 10, 2013 interview by Christopher Hudson that had 500,000 views called Whistleblower, Secret Plot to Nuke Parts of the USA Exposed. The whale is the banking cartel. After I harpooned the whale last week, I have said that the whole world is now on a Nantucket sleigh ride. In case you're wondering why it's taking so many fatal body blows to do the banking cartel in, just think about what it took in Moby Dick to kill the whale. It takes teamwork and many repeated harpoons, because the Leviathan is so big. You didn't hear back from Heather Gerken, the new dean of Yale Law School, who's an expert in election law, or Robert Post, the former dean and a constitutional law expert, or Neil Gorsuch. I've accused them of lying to you, and I repeat this again today. I have said that the entire legal profession needs to be put in the trash, because the lawyers are all working for the banking cartel and helping the banking cartel steal all your property. There were 4 more comments, but YouTube has removed them. In the meantime, YouTube hid more of my comments and rearranged the comments to put their shills first. That's why I'm now using other social media to highlight the banking cartel's lies and to put my replies back in view. The banking cartel thought their mind control would make people so apathetic that we wouldn't care that they tried to nuke us in South Carolina. They also thought they were going to continue to rip the fabric of the United States apart and divide us with their agent and fake president, Donald Trump. They thought we wouldn't know by now that they were causing the flooding in Texas. That was why I just posted the list of countries that use weather modification. What a surprise! The banking cartel broke the link to the information about its weather modification activities. So I'm showing this to you again, this time on Internet Archive and at the end of this post. I'm also showing you some of my comments that YouTube is trying to hide, and an email from Izumi Takahashi about directed energy weapons that are used by the banking cartel against targeted individuals. Patience Wright shared a 3-year-old video that documents how Major General Michael Carey and Vice Admiral Tim Giardina were fired for refusing to nuke Charleston, South Carolina on the 7th of October 2013. The U.S. military didn't like what happened either when Commander Heather Cole and General Dana Pittard were fired for preventing a first nuclear strike against the Soviet Union on March 15, 2015. The U.S. military remains loyal to the American people and to the Constitution of the U.S. No, these heroes who refused to nuke Charleston were never reinstated. We're following up on this video to stop the New World Order, and we're very much on track. And then I was telling you about Heather Ann Tucci Giraffe. She's a Vatican agent. The TVA is a trick and is being reversed, but you will be getting yourself into trouble for applying. I have been telling people so many times not to go to the side of the banking cartel, and that the banking cartel is not to be trusted. Here is an earlier tweet about Heather Ann Tucci-Giraffe, and that's a link in the teleprompter for that. And Izumi Takahashi wrote me in 2017, she's the Japanese journalist, about her aunt. Dear Karen, I too agree with her that she fell without reason, as if she was pulled to the left, and the attack was by some directed energy weapon. Anyway, I believe she has strength enough to be able to recover and be able to walk again pretty soon. When a targeted individual, the guy who introduced me to another targeted individual, saw me for the first time, he was surprised to see me using canes and asked me if I had hip pain, because when he was married, his ex-wife had pain in her hip, and after he divorced his wife, she stopped having the pain. And when he got a girlfriend and lived with her, she had pain too. And the night before I saw him the first time, he had pain on his hip for the first time and thought hip pain was some kind of message. So he was very sure the hip pain was caused by some directed energy weapon. If the banking cartel still think they can negotiate with you, they're very stupid. Don't they know your character? Love, Izumi. I've been knocked down many times by targeted energy weaponry. I now understand that I have atrial fibrillation. I learned this from a markedly abnormal EKG a couple of days ago. Also probably from directed energy weaponry. The banking cartel's attempt to censor me has backfired. A big lie is not the truth. On the 13th of February, the banking cartel deleted my response to Shapey Mao's comment. On the 10th of February, I replied to Shapey Mao on YouTube, and I copied people in my social media. We all need to do our bit here too, and I'm being told that it's time to wind down, so let me tell you the outro, and you can see in the teleprompter what it is, the section that I didn't have time for. Attempts to hide world corruption aren't working anymore now that enough people are starting to catch on. The legal profession, judges, and the rest of the experts and politicians who try to keep on hiding the truth and reality are now only exposing themselves as part of world corruption. Stay tuned as the dominoes keep on falling.